Hi everyone, it's Robin with Bouquet in Vancouver, Canada. In today's video tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make a looser, very on-trend garden-themed bouquet. And if you've watched our other videos, you're going to recognize this exact same method in another tutorial that we did that showed you how to make a much more high-end bouquet. And what made it high-end was it used more expensive flowers than what we're going to use today, and a lot more types of flowers. So the very first take-home message I have for anyone watching that wants to do a very on-trend look, and that's with a lot of greenery and a looser structure, but you're on a tight budget, is to definitely use less expensive flowers, but also use fewer varieties. If you've been watching our videos, you kind of know this theme. The idea being that the more fillers and types of flowers you introduce to a bouquet or any kind of an arrangement, the higher the cost is, even if it's the same size as something that's more budget friendly. So yeah, those would be my very first tips if anyone is on a budget. Other than that, we're gonna get into the flowers and the greens that we're gonna use. So to start, we have roses, and we've used standard roses in a lot of our videos, and one main reason for that is they're a very budget-friendly flower. They are available year-round in a lot of different colors. They handle well. They're a really good choice for DIY. This particular variety is called Nina. It's a gorgeous soft pink, and I do think that comes across, I hope it does in the camera. It opens fairly well as well. In terms of the prep, it's the same prep I've done in the other videos. I've taken all of the leaves off the stem, taken off the thorns if there were any. Different varieties have different amounts of thorns, and I've taken off the outer 3 or 4 really ugly bruised guard petals. This one opened really well on its own, but you can also sort of, if you like a more open rose, you can very gently insert your fingers and just sort of press the petals more open. So that's the rose we're going to use. We're also going to use spray roses, and we've used them, I believe we've used them before, but they're just basically, yes, we used them in the hydrangea rose video. So these are basically smaller roses on a single stem. This is a variety called white majolica. It's like pink majolica. It opens beautifully, but not all spray roses open this big. That's just good to know in terms of what to expect when you place an order with someone. They open to varying degrees, but they are a beautiful flower to use in most types of bouquets. I'm gonna skip the greens for now. We have, the other 2 flower types we're using is, we have stock, and we've used stock before in the calla and rose bouquet. And the only comment, I have a couple of comments about it. In terms of the prep, it has no thorns, but it does have leaves that usually go all the way down. And like we do with all of the other flower types and greens we're using, we want like a very clean, naked stem when we work. So you take all of the leaves off. In the rose and calla bouquet, we did something different to the stalk. In that case, we trimmed it from the top. I think in that video I explained that sometimes stalk is leggy. It has a very long bit at the top where there are no flowers, so I like to trim it because I like a cluster of flowers. The bouquet we're going to make today is different. It's not going to be as tight. It's not a round ball of a bouquet. So I like the shape. I like the little buds at the end. So I'm not going to trim it from the top. However, I am going to trim it a little bit from the bottom, just a bit, just a couple of florets, only because I don't need it to be, I don't need the flowers to go all the way down the stem. I would in an arrangement, in maybe like a ceremony arrangement, but in a bouquet, this is plenty. In terms of the flowers you cut off, you may remember from other videos, I talk about saving them for boutonnieres. I don't like using stock florets in boutonnieres. They're a very delicate flower. They're prone to wilting. They bleed when they get wet. So I use them very cautiously. You can still hang on to them. You never know, you might find a use for them, but just, they're not one of my top choices for boutonnieres. Something like a spray rose is a much better choice, but just something to know. And then the last flower type we're using are very, very budget friendly. They're spray mums, and the prep for these is the exact same way it was for the other flowers. We took the lower leaves off. I usually take off some of the side branches. I don't always like a lot of branches on there, but that's totally up to you. And you can always do that a bit more as you work. So that's the flowers. So right there, we've reduced the variety of flowers that we're using, and we're using cheaper flowers. Spray mums are incredibly budget friendly. Roses and spray roses are also on the more budget friendly end, and stock's about where the roses are in terms of price. For greens, I have a mix of eucalyptus. It's actually a very similar mix to what we had before. I've got Dollar, which is beautiful, that sage green color. I have some small leaf eucalyptus just for the inside of the bouquet. And I have some baby blue euc as well. So basically, I wouldn't use more than 3 types if you're trying to be on a budget. 1 type if that's all that works. But at the very least, you got your greens covered. And then for filler, we only have 1 type. I don't remember what we had for the last one. I think it was 2 possibly, but we just have wax. That's all we have. Limonium is a great choice. Wax is good. I don't tend to use baby's breath in a bouquet like this, but you can if that's your choice. Yeah, so that covers our flowers and greens. And just remember the main thing, oh, and with the greens, the main thing is just like with the flowers, you trim the lower leaves off so they're a clean stem and easy to work with. Really quick note about the supplies. It's the same kind of stuff we've used in every single one of our videos. You have good snips. I recommend them if they're in your budget to buy proper flower snips or gardening shears. Some of these flowers have really thick stems and regular scissors have a tendency to not cut cleanly. And what happens when you don't get a clean cut is you don't get good hydration, which is what leads to wilting flowers. We have regular scissors to cut ribbon with. We have, oh, my personal favorite, it's that, what do they call it, strapping tape. I think that's an Oasis brand name, but basically it's the tape that's used to tape down foam. But I prefer to use it in an arrangement because it's like a proper sticky tape. It has a sticky back, it's very strong. I don't like the floral tape that gets used for boutonnieres. It's not as strong. Again, you can use whatever works for you, rubber bands, duct tape, whatever gets you to bind the bouquet together securely. I have ribbon, white in this case, totally up to you what color. And then to bind the ribbon to the stems, I have those short pins that I really like. They're about 3/4 inch, very easy to insert. Okay, so we've covered everything and we're ready to get started. So you get started the same way you get started with most of the bouquets that you're gonna make, and that is starting with like some kind of central flower and you start clustering the stems together. So don't have to overthink this. You just start putting different types of greens and flowers and fillers together, and it very slowly starts to come together. And the main thing to note with this style of bouquet, and we saw it in the other video as well, and the other type of looser, more garden themed bouquet, is it's very important to cross the stems. So in some of the videos you saw, I mentioned how parallel stems are perfectly fine. That's great if you're looking for a very tight round bouquet. We want something that opens more loosely, and the best way to get sort of a loose display of the flowers on top is to splay the stems. In other words, have them cross like this. They're not tight and parallel. They cross at some midpoint and then splay out at the bottom, and that's what's going to help you get a looser look. So that's basically it. Actually, you just sort of like start adding in your flowers. Put some stock in there. You can already see you're getting a good mix of flower types. You've got the greens that are adding that really, really on-trend greenery look. That one might be poking out a bit too far, but we can trim it after if we like. We're keeping the stems fairly splayed out. A quick tip, if some of your stems are too long and they're kind of hitting your table or making it awkward to work with, you can always trim them shorter. Here we are. I think that is too long. I'm just going to trim that really quick at the top. Okay. And then we've got, what else can we do? We can put in a stalk there. Work in some wax. Again, just one type of filler to keep the cost down. If you saw our other video about the cost impact of fillers and greens, you know that fillers add to the overall look, they add to the beauty of the arrangement, but they add a lot to the price, but not the size. And that's the most, that's one of the more disappointing things, I think, for a lot of people that are looking to make something that's really on trend and has a lot of fillers and greens, is to find out that even though it looks like it's just made with cheaper flowers, like it's just greenery, it's just fillers, how could it cost that much? It actually costs more than a more basic type of bridal bouquet that's just hydrangeas and roses, and it has to do with all of those costly fillers and greens that add to the look but don't add, they add to the look, they don't add to the size, and they definitely add to the price. So you can see it's coming together. Those spray mums are a really good addition. They have a different sort of shape to the petals and the spray roses. So you're still getting that variety, you're still getting texture, but you're not necessarily paying an arm and a leg to get the look. Some more greens here. Okay. Starting to come together. So even though it's not going to be a tight round bouquet, you want to make sure that as you're working, it's great if you have a mirror to look into to make sure that this is happening, that you're getting symmetry around the bouquet. So you want to make sure that your flowers are more or less coming together if not a round shape, at least a symmetrical shape. So you can see here, I need some more flowers down here. I need to add some to the back. You just keep adding them around the end or the sides of the bouquet, taking a look in a mirror, making sure that everything is balanced. Even if it's loose, you do still want it to be balanced, and adding pieces as you see a place for them to go. I'm gonna take a little break. I'm gonna finish off this bouquet using the exact same methods I just showed you today, and then we're gonna wrap it all up. So I finished the bouquet using the same methods I was just showing you earlier, and I love it. I think it came out beautiful, and I think it illustrates so well that you can get a really beautiful on-trend look while using more budget-friendly flowers. You don't have to use higher-end flowers necessarily, and especially if they're not in your budget. In terms of the final quantity of stems that we used, if you're planning along at home and you'd like to make a similar look, we used 6 of these purple stock, 5 of the pink Nina roses, 3 stems of the white spray roses, and 3 stems of the spray mums. The greens and the filler are a little bit harder to quantify because you may have seen in other videos, they are often smaller branches that come off of bigger branches, so there's not a consistent number of stems per bunch, but I'd say we used roughly 15 to 20% of one bunch of wax and a few stems each of the silver dollar eucalyptus, the baby blue eucalyptus, and the gunny euc. So a fabulous look. It came together really well. One thing to note, as I finished the bouquet, is I started adding flowers lower and lower. So that's what's important for giving you sort of a finished symmetrical look to your bouquet. So the flowers up here are higher, and you start inserting these at a lower level, and it kind of goes down in steps. The other important note that I'd like to make if you're trying to do a similar look at home is if you'll notice in this bouquet and other types of sort of loose high-end bouquet, or high-end loose garden themed bouquets, is that wherever something pokes out of the bouquet, something else pokes out with it. So I find like that's a really good organic look. So wherever the stalk is, we have some gunny coming out beside it. We have some wax sort of complementing it. And that's what gives you a really good smooth transition between the different layers of flowers. You don't want something that's a very tight ball with just random individual little bits of flowers or greens poking out. It's not quite that organic look that's really trending that most people want to get. So that's sort of one tip in order to sort of achieve that look that you're seeing online. So I bound it to save time. I bound it and I trimmed it shorter before we add the ribbon on, and adding the ribbon is super easy. I also bound it I didn't go too far down because the stems are sort of splayed out, so I didn't want to push them together tighter. So I just did about an inch where the stems crossed. And in terms of adding the ribbon, it's super easy. And we're not even going to add very much because we're not going to go too far down. You just start anywhere, and I don't bother binding it at the beginning. The tension of the bouquet holds it together. I would just do it probably just this 1 inch. I don't think I'm even going to move down at all. And whoops. There we go. It's taut. It's holding itself in place. When I kind of feel like I've got a spot that it's good, I'll just trim it and use my short pins to keep that ribbon in place. You just insert them because they're short and they're shorter than the thickness of the stem. I just do them totally perpendicular directly across. If your pins are really long, you're going to want to insert them up or angle down, just because otherwise they'll come through to the other end. So there you have it. There's a budget-friendly, loose, garden-inspired look. I think I've covered it all. If you guys had any questions, just drop me a line at info@boutesjardin.com. Otherwise, we will see you next time. Thanks, guys.